anybody a former competitive runner? Has anyone watched competitive races, like seriously competitive long distance races? Think about this. What does the lead person or the lead group look like at the end of the race? Have you ever paid attention and noticed this? I think this is true of every endurance sport out there. It looks horrible. People fall trying to catch their breath, legs giving out, and there's always someone off to the side puking their guts out. Snot's running down people's faces. It's what it looks like to push your body as fast as you can for as long as you can, and it's gross. It makes you want to participate, right? So I did this for years. It's a lifestyle for sure, but it was not always that way for me. In fact, there was a time when I was going to quit and do something, more normal, right? There was a time where I just couldn't do it anymore. But I had a realization that changed everything for me. I tell you this now because this realization I had in high school, it stuck with me into my adulthood and very much harmonizes with my understanding of God and what it is to be a spiritual being. So I'm going to share it with you. So, back in the day, stupid, naive young Chad thought that if I participated and practiced hard enough, put in the work every day, listened to my coaches, and ran all the miles, that eventually, given enough time, I would reach a place in competitive running where I could race hard and not feel like garbage at the end, gasping for breath, having my legs scream at me. I thought very honestly that I could train my way out of the pain. But that's not how it works at all. Yes, over time you can endure more and run faster, farther, and longer at top speed, but it still hurts, and it will hurt every time you do it. I have to tell you, once I realized that it was always going to be hard and accepted that fact, once my thinking shifted from, when is this hurt going to stop, to, this is how it's going to be, everything changed. My expectations changed, and I really began to thrive in a team environment, encouraging my fellow runners to keep going and push through the discomfort. At this point, you may be thinking to yourself, that's your big takeaway? I mean, Chad, duh. Seriously, you can't expect a hard thing not to be hard. Well, fair, but then answer this for me. If that is obvious and can be deduced by a naive high school sophomore, why then do we keep thinking that we can work our way out of hard things as adults? Letters were sent by courtiers to all the king's provinces, giving orders to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all Jews, young and old, children and women, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. In every province, whenever the king's command and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting and weeping and lamenting, and most of them lay in sackcloth and ashes. Then Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him a message for Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is but one law: to be put to death. Only if the king holds out the golden scepter to someone may that person live. I myself have not been called to come in to the king for 30 days. When they told Mordecai what Esther had said, Mordecai said to them to reply to Esther, "Do not think in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. Who knows? Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for just such a time as this." Then Esther said in reply to Mordecai, Go, gather all the Jews to be found in Susa, and hold a fast on my behalf, and neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. And I, my maids, will also fast as you do. After that I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." There is a market for experts, politicians, financial advisors, and religious leaders who tell you what you need to do and how you need to live so that you can hopefully avoid the worst parts of life, the pain in life. And in doing so, worry less, be less nervous, be less anxious. Some part of us still honestly believes that we can avoid the hard things in life if we try really, really hard. Enter the book of Esther. Esther invites us into the world of the Persian royal court. The Persians are a superpower that ruled the people of Israel. The Persians are rich and powerful, and as with any empire, the Jewish people have to learn how to survive under their rule, under their laws, and of course, with the scapegoating that they're subject to as conquered people. In this context, Esther, a Jewish woman in the Persian king's harem, becomes queen in a bizarre set of events. In her role as queen, she is informed of a plot to destroy her people, and then acts courageously, diplomatically, and shrewdly to save them. Esther is a book written to give people in captivity hope, as they work to balance the need to assimilate and the desire to maintain their own unique identity. This book, well, it has everything. It has irony, it has humor, there's plenty of hyperbole and other great storytelling techniques, but there is one thing this book has that is unique from all other biblical stories. Do any of you know what that is? Here's a clue. It's what's not in this book. It does not have God in the story. God is noticeably absent, which has made Esther, from the very beginning, one of the most disputed books by both Jewish and Christian audiences. And you might think that's weird that the Bible includes a story that never directly mentions God. But for me, well, I appreciate this fact. As the story is told, Esther and her people have to try to navigate an incredibly challenging, very painful time without any kind of assurance from God or certainty that what they're doing is right. And if that is not honest about life, well, I don't know what is. Isn't that our reality? I know I've told you this before, but I rarely have people come to me saying things like, "Chad, you would not believe my experience this week. I was really struggling with a decision, or I was really struggling with a family member or my boss, but then, out of nowhere, like a dream, I encountered what I can only describe as the presence of God, the voice of God, and now I have this peace and clarity about what to do." That was an incredible God moment. Now, not to say that this never happens to people, because it does, and that's great. But more often, the conversations that I do have, if I have any conversation on this topic at all, they go more like this. "Chad, since my wife died, I hate my life. I feel no peace or healing. I'm not even sure if God's real." Or someone else might say, "I don't know what to think. I was raised, in the church as a kid, but I don't know about any of this stuff now. I don't know if I have faith. I still pray. I'm not quite sure why. I don't hear, sense, or feel God. Is something wrong with me? What do I do about this? Or should I just be done?" That's real. That's honest. It's hard. The struggle with God's silence or perceived absence is so common, but many people, for various reasons, won't verbalize it. It's like a secret they carry with them that they're not quite comfortable sharing with others, at least not yet. It's these words, "I don't know what to do," that are coming back to us. This is especially true of those who grew up in the church as children and simply took God's reality and presence as a given, only years later, through cultural influence or personal experience, come to a place where they are incredibly uncomfortable with God's silence or absence in their life. Without knowing the particularities of your family, I am very comfortable saying that you know what I'm talking about, because either I'm describing you or I am describing somebody that you really care about. To absolutely worsen this issue, we have equated silence with something negative, like anger or absence. So for example, I can say, like when your partner is mad at you and gives you the silent treatment. Well, that's bad, right? You know that. Silence means that you messed up. But just in case that doesn't work for you, I'll give you another example, because in my case, it doesn't work for me. Emily does not give me the silent treatment when I screw up. I am always very much aware of what I did wrong. Let me give you this one though. So I don't know if you've ever been with someone at the end of life when their chest rises and it falls and it just doesn't go back up again. The noise of breathing stops, the silence that follows is deep and it's awful and it's powerful and it's overwhelming, because silence is the sound of loss and it's the sound of death. It's the sound of your life in the process of changing. Silence is uncertainty and it's chaos. It's painful. There are so many times when all we want is guidance, to know what to do, to see that it will be all right, to feel that there's something more to life beyond ourselves, a loving and merciful God. But what we get instead is this just feeling of uncertainty, of not knowing what to do, of God's silence. To be human means that we wrestle with this hard thing. We're not able to work ourselves out of this, and yet we try to so often. Esther, as well as other biblical voices, acknowledge this struggle. And I'm so grateful for that, for a voice that normalizes that faith is not as simple as we sometimes want it to be. That we often move forward not knowing if what we're doing is right. Only in faith and hope do we trust that God is present in our struggles. Today, or this week, like many churches, we commemorate the Reformation in the Christian church. For those who know the story and have been brought up in this tradition, it's easy to forget that part in history, that was a time of great uncertainty. The world was changing, Europe was expanding, technology was innovating, the way communication went out through the printing press. The church was dividing itself. I mean, this was a hard time. Emotions were high, anxiety was up, and yet for many of the early reformers, when the path forward was not really clear, when they thought undoubtedly to themselves, I don't know what to do, they came back to the gospel story that it is God's grace and love alone that is the source of life. If I had a magic wand and could instantly change one thing about Christians in America, it would be for people to see that the story of our faith is a story about hope, not about certainty. It is hope that empowers Esther to act, not knowing if her actions will save her people or lead to her death. It is hope that allows us to move forward with a big decision in life, or to take a step into the darkness after the death of a loved one, not knowing where the path we leap will take us. It is hope that the driving force in our community is love. It is our hope that others will have faith on our behalf and show us the love and grace of God when we cannot see it or sense it in our own lives. It is hope in the goodness of God, in the way of love that Jesus modeled and taught, that moves us to care for those in our physical communities, like in our families and places of worship, as well as those outside of our personal communities. I mean, hope is not certainty. Certainty demands unquestioning loyalty to maintain its integrity. It's black and white. It doesn't allow room for growth or change. And in fact, it is the complete opposite of faith. It doesn't acknowledge these 6 words of, I don't know what to do. The good news that we hear today is that the story of Esther teaches us that we're not called to be certain. Instead, we're called to have hope in the midst of our doubts, questions, and uncertainties. During the hard parts of life, we're called to trust and hope that God loves us and follows us wherever we go, which does allow us to move forward, even when we're not sure where we're going, even when we're not sure what to do. And that is the good news we hear today. That is what, as a community, we need to hear. Thanks be to God for that. Amen. As a way of taking this story a little bit deeper into your own life, applying it directly where you are at today, here's a couple of reflection questions that I invite you to journal about, think about, reflect on, have a conversation with a partner about. So question number 1, what is the hard thing in your life right now? We all have hard things. What's yours? Number 2, reflect on the difference between hope and certainty. Why does it matter that the story of our faith and the ministry of Jesus is based in hope, that is faith, and not certainty?